Oh, we're in the wrong place. Let's not have that. He hasn't come back to host it. He's come back to chat. Hello, Willie. So, afternoon, everyone. As you can see, no Martin on this one. He's decided that you are due a break of his face, so he's taking this one off because I think he's back tonight anyway. And I am joined by Willie. How you doing? Long time no see, my man.
I'm good, mate. Just been really, really busy with life. So Martin annoyed me yesterday enough to get me back on for a pod.
Yeah, he does that, doesn't he? He just keeps going until you go, all right, fine. And then you jump on.
He really does. I actually don't think people realise just how annoying one person can be.
I know. That's also his fault that where we were 30 seconds late. So it's all Martin's fault. As always, it's Martin's fault. I just want to answer one question before we get going from Peter MacArthur. How do you become a member? It depends what you're watching on. If you go down into the description, it should say show more. Hit that, and the link should be in there. If you're watching on the laptop or PC, on your phone, and because you said on the chat that you've got an iPhone, that's Cammy K is saying, do you see a box next to the chat bar? It has an S inside it. Click that, bosh, and you'll be able to sort your membership out. So we look forward to putting that one up on the show in a minute. Krychek's in. So the reason that Willie's here is we're going to talk about the Academy. And I can't talk about the Academy because I know bugger all about it because I don't get to see much of it down this neck of the woods. So hopefully Willie's all up to date with the Academy. I know he does the Academy stuff. So I suppose the only place to really start is what is happening with the B team, Willie?
It basically doesn't exist anymore. The club at the end of last season made the decision that they weren't going to keep it in place. They didn't think that the games programme was really benefiting anybody. The majority of the players were out on loan in the second half of the season. So, yeah, they basically looked at it. And I dare say in some matters as well, it's probably, sort of cutting away some of the cost. We obviously had quite a number of players that were at the club that probably weren't even on the fringes of the first team. They were too old for the under-18s. So they were at that in-between stage. And obviously now the decision's been made that the B team no longer is going to be utilised and the structure is changing within Scottish football. Before it used to be under 16s and then they would move up to the under 18s. That has now changed. It's now the under 17s and under 19s. And as part of the under 19s, you're allowed a certain number of overage players that can play in the competition. And that group will also play in the Challenge Cup, although I think it's been renamed this season by a sponsorship deal, but it's basically the Challenge Cup. So I think you're looking at, I think it's about 16 league games plus at least 6 Challenge Cup games. And as well as that, yeah, some of these players will probably go out on loan as well. So it's one of those ones, I think they're trying to kind of set it up so that young players are going to get first team experience, but they could also drop into the academy and play games if they're not getting that experience at first team level.
Timothy Sharp, straight in, as he is. Again, like Mark was saying, never trust a man with a haircut like that. What's the point of the academy? Any decent talent good enough for our first team is off to the EPL for big wages.
See, but yeah, again, I think that's just something that has become a social media thing. I mean, it's not true, in all honesty. Yes, some players do go, but there's also a lot of players that have stayed. I mean, if you look at last summer, for instance, Ryden Maguire had an opportunity to go. He decided to stay. He's now obviously been in and round about the first team. Probably kind of most well known for his celebration at Aberdeen in the main stand, where I think it was him and Nico Raskin had been getting quite a bit of abuse during the game. So he's obviously been part of the first team at 16. Aidan McCallion was another that was obviously linked with several English Premier League clubs. He chose to stay. He's now been in training with the first team. He's obviously been on the bench that people will have probably seen towards the end of last season. I believe he was due to come on in one of those games, but unfortunately an incident happened during the game that he ended up not getting on. And also Alex Smith, which I'm sure quite a few people will know his name because he was kind of plastered all over social media last summer. He had a lot of offers from English Premier League clubs and he chose to stay as well. So I don't really know where people get this thing where if an English Premier League club shows interest to go, it's just not the case.
I think a lot of it comes back from the Billy Gilmore going to Chelsea and the other lad, which I've completely forgotten his name. It was there that disappeared, went to Aston Villa.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the two sort of the more high-profile ones. I think we did get the kid from Brentford, but he got homesick, went back. But
see, what I would say is, right, see when you look at the amount of players that agree to sign, yes, you're always going to lose one or two every so often. That's just the nature. I mean, if somebody like Billy, I mean, the reality for Billy was he wasn't going to stay in the academy. See, if Billy signed his new contract with Rangers, he was going to play for the first team. Because Billy was already good enough to be playing in and round about the first team at 15, 16. You know, that's how good Billy was. Rory Wilson that went to Aston Villa, one of the most natural young goal scorers that you'll see. You know, incredible ability in and around the 18-yard box. Yet again, you know, he got offered an incredible, you know, contract by Aston Villa. And I think Rangers at the time, I mean, I can't remember exactly, but I think Rangers offered him the most money they'd ever offered an academy player to stay. But he obviously still chose to go. But obviously, sort of during that spell, there's many others that have chosen to stay. And that's, look, Eddie, I think social media sometimes, like, they don't always know all the facts before people put certain things out there. But that's just how social media is.
And someone's got a question for you. Paul McCorkle's got a question directly to you. Do you know how much input Kevin Thompson has with the youth? What's Kevin Thompson's stance at the club? What's going on with him?
Of course, yeah, no problem. Basically, Kevin came in the second half of the season, and he was working with Stephen Smith as part of the under-18s group. Obviously, his contract is up at the end of this month, I think. So I'm not too sure what's happening. Obviously, we still don't have a head of academy in place, although from what I've been told, that is pretty close to being put in place now. So maybe once that happens, we'll get more clarity on the roles that certain people are going to play within the club. But in the second half of last season, he was basically part of the under-18 group, which obviously Kevin obviously knows a number of these players, and he knows the academy quite well, having been there previously before leaving to go to Celtic Hearts.
Just before we move on, just to add that, Sandy, is there any truth to any of the current rumours? Elaborate for me so I know which rumours you're talking about, so we talk about the right ones, and then we will we'll go on from there. I think there is a couple of rumours kicking about, which we'll get onto in a bit after we've talked about the B team. Two that I know of today, but I'll just make sure I'm talking about the right ones. And a little bit of housekeeping. Andrew Duncan has become a YouTube member, so welcome in. Thank you very much for that. Doesn't tell me what type of membership you took up, but it does tell me you've become a member, so I'll have a look at it later. Other B team stuff. Good Brand has leaving a team down south as well. I think that might be another one that's linked to this whole our players just head down south when the offers come. Where was he in terms of actually breaking through into the first team setup? Was there any chance it was going to be this season? Was he good enough to do it? And is it a case of, do you know what? I've got this offer. Rangers aren't offering me anything else. I'm off.
I think it's probably a bit of the sort of in-between range. I would say the thing with Ollie, or like Good Days, most of the people can tend to call him, like the thing with Ollie was that he was always bigger and stronger than most of the other players at his age groups. So he's always had that power, that pace that maybe not a lot of other players have had at 14 and 15 like he has. So somebody like Ollie, he's been playing for like the under-18s for a while now. He's good technically. He bombs up and down the line. He probably could add a bit more to his game, but yet again, he is still only 16. So there's work still to be done. There's still things to be addressed within his game. In terms of the rumour that he was going to Newcastle, that's been about now probably for most of this year. So what we're looking at, kind of 5-6 months. So it's kind of felt like that's just been a waiting game for him to go and move there. But for me, at the end of the day, I don't have an issue with any young player that decides to go. It might work, it might not. I hope for his sake it does. it's a big decision to go, and sign for an English Premier League club, because obviously they have the budget to go out and basically kind of handpick players from all over the world. So it is a big move for Ollie, and I hope it does work out for him. In terms of the club, we've got quite a few young fullbacks who'll probably just take his position now. Somebody like Ashton Scally, who was part of the under-16s last year, he'll likely step up and play some games as well. So I think the kind of nature of the beast in football is, isn't it? Once somebody else goes, that's somebody else's chance to shine. And that's kind of how the academy is at every football club. Rangers will likely sign some players this summer from other clubs. And, somebody like Ollie Goodbrand's going to leave and go to Newcastle. And there's potentially one or two others that might go to England as well. But I don't think that's been confirmed yet.
Yeah, I think we've seen kind of the effects of the B team with the lad from PSG not being. We pulled out of that because obviously we don't know where we're going with our academy at the minute. A lot of the comments like the Krychek saying we need our academy players in another league. See, in Scotland, I don't ever see this happening where they're going to allow the B teams into the league setup. Also, we don't loan players out till it's too late. And it all links in together because Geordie also saying that the academy players need to either be playing games in our first team or going out on loan. How else are we going to find out which gems we've got and which ones we haven't got? All fair points, really.
Yeah, look, that's something that's coming into play this year. I don't know if people have maybe seen this online or potentially in the papers. What clubs can do, the top flight clubs can now have how do you call it, a sort of cooperation agreement. So you can have an agreement with a club in the Championship or League One where you can send out players on loan, but they can still play in the under-19 league if they don't play at the weekend. So the under-19 games will primarily be played on a kind of Monday or a Tuesday. So what would happen is if Rangers, for instance, sent out Cameron Scott, who's a fullback, say he goes out on loan and plays for Airdrie this year, and say that he's missed out in the starting 11 for the game on Saturday. So because of the agreement that is now allowed to be in place, he can come back and play on the Monday or the Tuesday for the under-19s so that he keeps up, his level of fitness, and then he would then get back to Airdrie and play the next weekend. That's part of the new agreement that's been put in place. That's actually came from the top of Scottish football, which is one of the better ideas, to be honest. It's something that's maybe been needing to be put in place for a while. But that seems to be a type of appeasement for clubs like Rangers and Celtic who have been looking to try and get a team in the league. But because the clubs are not agreeing to that, this seems to be what would you say, like a sort of in-between way of doing it, which will allow us to send players out to a particular club where they'll get that experience and knowledge in first-team football. But Rangers don't actually have control over the players while they're out on loan, if you know what I mean, because they're at another club. But they do because they can bring them back and play them in a 19s game. So it feels like there's a kind of handshake, but it's not a full handshake, if you know what I mean. It's like it's a sort of in between.
Our Brian has actually come in with a question. Our very own Brian, not on the show, but still watching. Do we see the new regime utilising young players better? A league to play in, loan them better compared to the old system. Obviously, the board before it was we went down this B team route, didn't work. Not really doing anything with the loans.
Yeah. All right, Brian. Good to see you as well, mate. I've not seen you for a while. Yeah, look, I think it's fair to say that the last 2 years haven't been good enough at the academy. I think you would have to say that since Craig Mulholland left the club, there seems like there's a bit of a lack of structure. Zeb did an okay job, but obviously he only lasted a year and left to go to Feyenoord. David McCallum was put in place on an interim basis to try and kind of oversee some of the structure in place. But I think everybody, has been talking about the new ownership now for what feels like forever. They're obviously now in place. So I guess at the moment, all I can really say is, yes, I can only hope it's going to be better. And you would like to think that they're going to help young players get into the first team. But yeah, again, until we hear from, like Kevin Fellwell on it, until we get a head of academy, it's really hard to guess. You know, the players are due back for pre-season in about 10 days' time, I think it is, something like that.
It is, yeah.
So I think once that happens, we might have more of an insight, and maybe I can jump back on and give people an update on, you know, what's been happening and what they see the future holding for the academy. But I would agree that I think the last couple of years have been disappointing because of the lack of structure at the club, in all honesty. And I think a lot of that's come down to some of the things that have come out in the Rangers review recently, with like the cost cutting and looking to do things to bring the budget down and things like that before the new ownership came in. And the academy was just one of those things that was almost just kind of left to sort of toddle along, but it didn't really seem to have anybody leading it.
Here's an interesting one from Jimbo, who's asking, isn't Prosser from Everton someone that may be coming in to head our academy? Now, again, I don't know a great deal about him. I don't know if this is true, but you're the man for the big questions.
Excuse me. I think, yeah, again, people are obviously putting the Everton link together on that one because obviously Dan Purdy and Kevin Felwell have come in. I think Felwell's obviously worked with Posner twice, I think it is, at Wolves and at Everton. It was interesting, the Everton statement when they announced that he was leaving, saying that he was going to take an opportunity abroad. Right? So if leaving England for Scotland counts as going abroad, then yes, there's a possibility. I'm not so sure leaving England and coming to Scotland counts as going abroad, unless he's told them porky pies, obviously, and that he's got to rock up in Glasgow in the next few days. It will be interesting, put it that way, to see who they appoint. Scotland in itself is different. You know, see when you watch Rangers playing against other teams in Europe, you can see that, you know, a Scottish academy is run very different from a Spanish one, a Portuguese one, a Dutch one, a Belgian one. So I think you need to have that knowledge of how Scottish football works if you're going to bring somebody like that in. So probably somebody with a British background would make a degree of sense on that. That's not to say that's who they'll appoint, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a British person that was appointed to become the head of the academy at Rangers.
It kind of makes sense that if you want to, I mean, the way they do it on the continent is completely different to how we do it, because we've tried doing the foreign ones with coming, getting people in from Ajax and all the rest of it, trying to follow that model. It doesn't appear to have worked. So, like you say, maybe a British person or someone within the Scottish structure or the English structure might make sense.
I mean, see, the only thing that I would say lastly on it, see, if you do want to change the whole structure of Scottish football, it's got to come from the top. It's got to come from the SFA, for the SPFL. All the top flight clubs need to be in agreement on it. But that just very rarely seems to happen in Scotland. There's always been like kind of loggerheads over what's the best thing to do, how do we help young players develop. Because the sad reality is we probably don't see enough young players develop in Scotland and make it into the first team. It's a criticism right across the board, in all honesty. For all, in the last year or two, we've had guys like Lennon Muller come through and play in the first team. More than not, a lot of these young players have went abroad, and that's what's got them into the first team, whether that's been like Doig or Hickey or Ferguson. And that's why I think somebody like Lennon Muller will 100% leave Scottish football. Because I think signing for Rangers and Celtic now isn't like the next step in their development. It's leaving Scotland and going to another level.
Which is being proven. You've got Ferguson, you've got Gilmore. I suppose you can count McTominay as Scottish, even though he's English. And even you got enough players proving the point that they've left Scotland and got better. And it's players that, in some cases, particularly with Ferguson, that we've got, just because his name's Ferguson doesn't mean we should sign him. And it's one of the biggest regrets I think we've got currently, that we didn't take the punt on him, because I think he could have been a special player even for us, but we'll never know.
Yeah, I think the reality of football is you never know how any player's going to work out. You know, for somebody like Lewis Ferguson, he took an opportunity. He left Hamilton Accies. You know, he went to Aberdeen. He then left Aberdeen and went to Italy. And he's developed into one of the best players over there, and he's been touted about for another move. So, and there's Hickey. Obviously, Hickey ended up at Brentford. I think Doig's been linked with a move to Juventus. So, it shows you there is talent in this country, but do we do enough to help them push on to develop? And I think that's where we're kind of on the outside looking in when it comes to the next level of leagues and the development that they can offer young players to a point.
Indeed, I'm going to go a couple more questions on this, and then we'll get into some Rangers chat as well, because obviously there's a lot going on outside of the youth side set of things. But Andrew Duncan there saying at 62 years old, hasn't seen much come through our academy. Do you think there is hope for the future?
I think it depends what he means by like sort of coming through. I think a lot of people obviously think that when players make it into the first team, they then become like guaranteed starters. And that's not always been the case for guys that have come through the academy. Guys like Maurice Ross was probably deemed to be a squad player. You know, sort of Stephen Smith, Charlie Adam. You know, there's been exceptional guys like Alan Hutton, Alan McGregor. Even Charlie Adam, to a point, obviously was probably deemed to be a squad player, and yet, you know, he went on to play for Blackpool and then Liverpool. So I think it depends on how you view people that have come through for the academy. Probably in recent years, you're looking at guys like sort of Ross McCrory. I think Ross went on to make like 40, 50 appearances for the first team before moving on. Even Ross McCausland, for all the kind of stuff that he gets in social media, I think he's played like 50, 60 games now. So that's part of the academy. Not everybody might become a first team superstar, but you know, obviously coming through and becoming part of the squad, which helps like the club, because they don't need to go out there and spend, you know, millions of pounds on a squad player.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the interesting one for the next few years for some of the young players that are coming through now. Can they make that next step? Can they become part of the first team? And what is the value? Because like, I mean, I think I said it on Twitter recently. Somebody like Bailey Rice has got good value.
Yeah.
Somebody like Mason Munn has got good value. Somebody like Ryden Maguire has got value. You know, that could turn out to be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million pounds. I don't know what it'll be, but there's value in those 3 young players. So from Rangers' point of view, by paying a nominal fee for Mason Munn and the same for Ryden Maguire and the same for Bailey Rice, if Rangers end up making, as I said, the 5 up to 10 million pounds for those 3 players, that's what the academy's there for. If we can get 1 or 2 of those guys that go for that, you know, that bigger fee, that's exactly why the academy's there. And I don't doubt that between one of those 3 players, one of those guys will go for really, really good money.
I mean, Bailey's already had his plaudits because of the way he handled Old Trafford. Not an easy place to go, even regardless of the season they were having. I've only seen Munn once because I don't get a lot of the youth stuff down here. But I've only seen him once, and he looked fairly decent on the time I did see him. I can't say I know much about the other fella, though. The boss is in the background, just to warn people. The boss is in the background. So, you know, nothing about best behaviour or nothing, just letting you know he's there. Andrew Duncan again. Question, do you see us being a feeder club to Leeds United under the new owner? So taking their youth and bringing them through and playing them in our first team as opposed to our own?
I don't believe so. No, I don't see that happening. Yes, we might get the odd loan from Leeds United. I don't dispute that could happen. There's obviously been links to 1 or 2 players already, which I think sometimes that's just an easy link for a newspaper to put out there. But my answer to that is I don't see it happening. I don't think that's something that Rangers would go down that route of doing that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we did see maybe someone who's on the fringes of Leeds' first team in the Premier League next year potentially coming in and loan. Because at the end of the day, they're out spending 10, 15, 20 million pounds on guys. So if one of those guys was to come up here and loan and do well for Rangers and help us be successful, then I don't see the academy side of things working. No, I genuinely don't think that'll happen.
No, I don't see us being a feeder club as such, but I think if we are in the same family, and there's nothing wrong with occasionally taking the odd player, because if they're decent enough, why couldn't they make a difference for us if they just need a season to get going? So it can work, and it can work both ways, because we can send players to them as well that may not be for us, but would work in the Premier League. Who knows? So one last thing, because it's just something that I remember from when I was growing up, that we did have a reserve league, and I think that is one of the biggest issues with Scottish football, that we got rid of it, because it made extra money for the club anyway. It was good for players coming back from injury. I can hear you, which is a shame.
Right, you just let everybody know that for however long there is left of the show, the phone lines are now open.
Well, I believe they will have already heard that, but the phone lines are now open, and you can call in on 0141 628 7237. You'll talk to Martin, and then he'll tell us that you're on the phone. So if you want to ring in, you can. Scott, you might lose your streak if you don't ring in, and then you might get someone else jump over you. We can't have that. So let's go for it. Anyway, back to that reserve league before we were so rudely interrupted, Willie.
Yeah, look, this is kind of one of these debates that we've had at the games, like with parents and stuff like that. And, like growing up, I remember like 6, 8, 10,000 people turning up at Ibrox for reserve games. So I just don't think those days will come back. I don't know if every club has a desire to keep players that little bit longer to have a reserve league. I think that's why this like sort of under 19 league that they're calling it, with the addition of 3 overage players, it's probably a kind of sort of hybrid reserve league, if you know what I mean. Because from what I've been told, there is no age limit on the under 19 overage player. So we could have like a 25-year-old playing in that game or a 30-year-old playing in that game because he needs minutes.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could look at it from that point of view and say, yes, it's going to benefit a young player. Because I felt that even Giannis Hadji was in playing in some of the B team games. I thought that was really good for some of our younger players. Because the way that Giannis did things on the pitch, like the professional manner in how he did it, I thought that was really good for our young players to see that. Because it's a different level when you go to the first team from the academy. And I genuinely think that was great. So, if at points this coming season, we've got some first team players that need to drop into the 19s, whether it's due to coming back from injury or lack of game time. I think these kind of things for the younger players can only benefit them, to be honest, because of the experience that they'll gain from playing with that type of player.
Yeah, I remember going to a reserve team Old Firm derby, and there was like 30 odd thousand at it. It was brilliant, and it was at my age at that time. It was a nice introduction to the Old Firm game before I went to the proper one. So it was good to get your kids along to as well, gets them interested as well. Hopefully, under 19s has that sort of kick as well, and that's what it works to. So let's part the youth team, because we could probably talk about it for another half an hour or so. I know your passion for the youth team, and let's get into some Rangers stuff as well. And singing, yes, we are going to talk about Connor Cody, because from my understanding of what I've been told this morning, again, I'm not affiliated with anybody at the club, just like Martin. I'm not affiliated to anyone at the club. This is just what I'm hearing, that Connor Cody, going by Leicestershire Live, the talks have started with Connor Cody as the path to Ibrox clears for him. What do you think about Connor Cody? Good addition, a nice stable head in the back line that we need moving forward.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from somebody like him coming in would be his experience. We've lost a lot of experience in the team in the last couple of years. Obviously, Connor Goldson leaving. He was basically a captain, wasn't he, Connor Goldson? He was somebody that led, the defence very, very well. Obviously, Leon Balogun's now left the football club. We've lost guys like sort of John Lundstrom, Borna Barisic. We've lost a lot of guys who were involved in the game for a long time, who had that ability to sometimes, do something in a game. And I think bringing in somebody that's obviously of that age, who's played a lot of football down in England, who's obviously played at a very good level for a long part of his career. At the end of the day, it's obviously going to come down to finances. I don't believe we would be able to match the wages that he's on down there, even though he has obviously dropped into the Championship now. I would imagine it'll be one of those deals where it might be a loan until his contract runs out, and then maybe Rangers make it a permanent deal in a year's time, unless they're just going to terminate his contract. And he's given a payoff and then he moves to Rangers. I don't know. Obviously, a bit like yourself, I've only seen bits and bobs of it on social media because I'm not on as much these days. But yeah, I'm certainly not against bringing in 1 or 2 experienced players, because a lot of the players that we do seem to have been linked with have been under 23, 24.
Mm-hmm.
So you do need, 1 or 2 older heads to kind of help us in the bigger games where maybe things aren't going as well, and you need somebody to steady the ship a bit.
Yeah, Gary Miller, morning. I don't even know if it's morning or evening or afternoon where you are. I think it's nighttime. or very, very early in the morning at least. But nice to have you along at this one as well. That's commitment, that. I'm not sure I'd get up, but Martin or me at early hours of the morning. Imagine turning on and seeing my face when you wake up first thing. Jesus. My poor wife, in fact, she has to do that every day. But anyway, we'll go on. Tim Sharp saying he's on 52 grand a week. But he's made his money in England. I mean, I said I got hammered when I said people like Harry Winks or Jack Butland would come up here and take a pay cut and whatnot. But they've earned their money, so they may well be on the downward slide. So 52 grand a week, he might take a cut on that. Who knows? But we'll see. We'll see on that one. One thing I have heard today is that Mulligan, the Dundee lad, the director of football at Ibrox, apparently not keen, and that deal is not happening. Was the last I heard. Don't know if you know any more up there, because obviously you're closer to the transfers and whatnot up there than I am down here as well. I can only pick up little bits that I pick from our chat, and my source on that one, Martin. So that tells you everything.
Look, I think like most things in football, I believe some of the links to, some of the players that were being talked about 1 or 2 months ago were obviously when, the ownerships hadn't taken over. Niels Coppin was obviously doing a lot of that recruitment stuff. It does seem that a lot of the players we were being linked with in the last 2 to 3 months, those guys now seem to be going somewhere else. So yeah, I think if you put 2 and 2 together, like you could be getting 5, but you could also be getting 4. The Mulligan deal, it'd be interesting. I don't think he's a bad player. Whenever I watched him and Lyle Cameron at Dundee, I thought the two of them were good players. But it feels like now some of the players we have been linked with under the new ownership, under the new director of football, it feels like we're going away from the players that we've been linked with under Coppin, and one of those was obviously Mulligan. So my gut instinct is I don't think we will sign him, and I think we'll go and look at. I'm not being disrespectful to Mulligan, because yet again I think he is a good player, but I think we might be looking for a slightly higher standard of player from out with Scotland because of the new ownership.
I know that the boys, Alex and Lewis, did a Russell Martin Howard deep dive and the players that he could bring in, and Mulligan did come up, and they sort of said he would fit the system that he wants to play. So, but we'll see. I mean, again, like I say, it's only rumours and speculation at this point, so it may be that I have egg on my face, and if I get egg on my face, I don't mind, because it means that Rangers are doing stuff and we're getting people in. Hamza Regaman, Willie. I'll run off the list of clubs. Brentford, Everton, West Ham, Lens, Lille, Rennes, Strasbourg, all tracking him. I know that I've seen this on social media, that obviously everybody, and I mean everybody, is talking about Hamza. Most obviously come from another persuasion of a club. But we're going to I think we might be struggling to keep hold of Hamza this summer. But what level do we go, right, that's the money we need for him, and that's him away?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's hard to know with Iga, man. He does things that I've not seen too many other players do in all my years watching Rangers. Technique-wise, he does things that are outrageous, in all honesty. I guess it comes down to how many players do they want to cash in on this summer. I think that's the big thing out of it. I would imagine they'll offer some new contracts to Egerman and Raskan to see if they can try and keep them. I would imagine when it comes to Raskan, it's slightly different, because he's only got 2 years, but I think like Egerman's got 3 or 4 on his. So even if a bid was to come in for Hamza, you don't necessarily have to sell. Whereas when it comes to Nico, I think it's clear that if he doesn't agree to sign a new contract, then we do need to sell him this summer. He's got 2 years left in his deal. It's the right time to move him on. He's just broke into the Belgian national team. And I think you've probably got to start looking at £15 million guaranteed, and then you start moving up the way, whether that's sell-on fees, whether that's add-ons, whether that's all these things that come with it. But I think a bare minimum for Raskan as a guaranteed starting fee has to be £15 million upwards. And then Rangers are hoping to get maybe 20, 22, 23, 25. I don't know what the final figure that Rangers would be wanting, But I think the baseline has to be 15, and then you've got to start adding on all the additional fees that you seem to see as part of most kind of contract negotiations and transfers these days. Sometimes they can be as much as what the actual transfer fee is, and that's where clubs actually make their money, is further down the line when they do win league titles or they win cups or they play set amount of appearances, or if they're sold on for an even bigger fee in the future.
Yeah, I mean, someone made a point there. Just bear with me while I find it again. So Gary Miller saying that he thinks that Russell kept Tav as captain because Nico is going. There could be some truth to that. I mean, a lot of managers have come in at Ibrox and just left Tav as captain because he's in situ, he's been captain for ages, and the other players like him. So it could just be that.
Yeah.
But with Nico, I'd love Nico to stay. Obviously, I'd love Nico to stay. But if he's not going to sign a new contract, then it's cash in now while we've got the chance to make money on him, because one more year, he goes for free. He'll sit till January. I know that he's a lovely guy and all the rest of it, but if he doesn't, we're not going to get a huge amount of money from him if we leave until 1 year, and he can sit till January. So I think the time is now to sell him if he doesn't sign that new contract. If he signs that contract, stay till next season, World Cup, and see what we can do.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, mate. And I think when it comes to Tav, like, if Russell Martin was never going to come out and strip Tav of the captaincy in his first meeting,
No.
you know, like, if anybody thinks that was going to happen, it's crazy. You know, these type of discussions will be private between the player and the manager. It might be that Tav in his final year turns into a squad player, but like, these kind of things are not going to be spoken about in the public domain. You know, Russell Martin in his first press conference wasn't going to say, by the way, the first thing I'm going to do is strip James Tavernier of the captaincy. Never going to do that. I don't know why people in social media think he was going to do that or why he was going to do that. It was never realistic. You know, like, no football manager is going to come in and just start, you know, saying he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. You know, like, you're just not going to do that. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I think people have to have an understanding that the players will come back for pre-season. I'm sure we'll have a couple of new signings in by then. You know, the manager will look at who's there. He'll look at how he's going to set up. He'll look at the players that he needs and wants. Maybe after a week or two of pre-season training, he'll need to go to Kevin Felwell and go, look, I think we need a new right back. I think we need a new number 9. I think we need a new winger. So, like, these things will probably happen over the course of the transfer window. I mean, what is it, the end of August, start of September, the window's opened until? So,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a long window, isn't it?
It's an odd window.
Yeah, I think people just need to be patient. I know that's not a great strong point for most people, but I think people need to be patient when it comes to transfers. I mean, you look at even just the basic transfers these days, they seem to take a week just for a basic transfer to happen, because, you know, the players got to be in agreement, the agents got to be in agreement, the two clubs have to be in agreement. You then get, you know, like an agent's fee, you get players signing on fees, you've got all these additional bonuses. More and more players seem to have like these sort of release clauses in their contract. Everything is, it's crazy now. In the past, you could be linked with a player one day and he'd sign the next, but it's not like that now. Everything's very long-winded and slow, and I've got no doubt Rangers will be, you know, quite far down the line with one or two players right now, but it might just be that it's next Wednesday, next Thursday before they're announced, because everything just takes time.
I mean, I'm not sure, because the Club World Club Cup, that is not an easy thing to say. It's caused an issue because it was opened up for a little bit, the window was open, then it's closed again while the tournament happens, and then it'll open again at the end of it. So it's an odd window. It's a very odd window. So, like you said, we might have players who started their negotiations, but now we can't bring them in until it reopens again. So we just patience, which is not Rangers' favourite thing.
Yeah, and we see the biggest thing at the end of the day. See, if you were to even sign a player next week, you still can't report until pre-season begins anyway. So it's not like it actually makes a difference. I mean, Rangers could rock up in the first day of pre-season and they announce 2 or 3 players.
Yeah.
So that's So I think people just need to be patient and calm down a wee bit. Social media seems to bring out the kind of crazy thoughts in people at times. I think if they just calm down a wee bit, we will get the players in. You know, the manager will get to work with the players. He'll get to train with the players. He'll get an idea as to who's going to be good enough in the system that he wants to play. And then in the background, I'm sure, you know, Dan Purdy and Kevin Felwell will be doing what they're paid to do, which is to get some players out of the door and get new players in to help the manager have as strong a team as possible, come the start of the Champions League and the league campaign.
Which is, like I said, window opens on Monday. There you go. Paul saying the window opens on Monday. So when that happens, who knows what's going to happen? So just sit tight, listen to the rumours, enjoy them. I did have one more from Matisha Freegan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. If he's watching, I do apologise. But I'll let them talk about that later because we have gone on. As nobody's phoning in, we're going to end it there because it's not supposed to be an hour-long show, this. Willie, thank you very much for coming in and giving us your insight on the Academy and all things Rangers as well. It's a pleasure to have you back on for even if it is just the one show.
Yeah, I'm sure Martin will annoy me again and come back on. But yeah, it was good to come back on the Rabble and have a chat for a while.
Yeah, that's we're always here. We're always talking, and most of the time we're talking rubbish, particularly when ENT's on. But for that though, guys, we're going to leave you. Thank you very much for it. Thank you for the birthday wishes in the chat as well. I did see them. I did have a good, nice, chilled out day, and then at loads. That's pretty much how my birthday goes. And then I went to the gym this morning to work it all off. But thank you very much. The guys will be back tonight for your Friday night Rabble at 7:30, and we will see you then. So until then, cheery bye.